She can sleep by the ice machine." My sister said it loudly enough that the bellman by the luggage cart flinched. She was standing in the middle of the lobby with a fan of key cards spread in her hand like she was about to perform a magic trick, and in a way she was. She was about to make me disappear. It was a Friday afternoon in June, a little after 4 o'clock, and the lobby of the Lakemont Hotel was full. A wedding party was checking in by the windows. A man in a golf shirt was asking about the pool hours. 40 strangers, maybe more, were moving through that big, bright room with its marble floor and its smell of lemon polish and fresh flowers. And my family had claimed the center of it the way they claimed the center of every room they ever entered. Renee held the key cards up and dealt them out one at a time, calling names like a teacher taking attendance. Our cousins got the lake views. Aunt Carol and her husband got the Corner King on the 3rd floor. My parents got the suite with the balcony, the one Renee announced as the best room in the building, which it was not, but I did not say so. My mother took the key with both hands like it was a sacrament. Then Renee got to me. She looked at the last card in her hand, and then she looked at me, and something came into her face that I had been watching arrive for 30 years. A kind of pleasure, the specific pleasure of an audience. "Tessa," she said. "Room 112. One of the cousins snorted. He knew the hotel better than I thought, or at least he knew what a first-floor room number meant in a building where everyone else was sleeping above the tree line. "It's by the ice machine," Renee said, to the room more than to me. "She can sleep by the ice machine. Honestly, she's lucky we even told her where the reunion was." My mother nodded. I want to be precise about that because it was the nod that did the real work. Renee was loud, and loud things are easy to dismiss. But my mother stood there in her good linen jacket with her sweet key in both hands, and she nodded along, slowly, the way you nod at a fair price. My father did not look up at all. He was reading something on his phone, thumb moving, face lit, faintly blue in all that golden afternoon light. I bent down to pick up my bag. I had set it by my feet when the key ceremony started, and at some point in the laughing, Renee's sandal had caught it and shoved it sideways across the marble, far enough that I had to take 3 steps to retrieve it. I do not think she even meant that part. Some cruelty is intentional, and some is just momentum. A young man behind the front desk started to come around the counter. He was reaching for my bag, because that is what the staff of a good hotel does when a guest's luggage is on the floor and her family is laughing. I caught his eye and gave him a small shake of the head, and he stopped, and a look crossed his face that nobody in my family would have recognized, because nobody in my family had ever worked a front desk. It was the look of a man swallowing the truth, because the truth was not his to tell. "Thanks for the room," I said to Renee, and I took the key card out of her hand, and I walked. Nobody in that lobby knew that the only person my sister should never have humiliated was the one she picked first. I did not know yet what I was going to do about it. Walking down that long first-floor corridor with the carpet I had chosen and the sconces I had argued about, I only knew 2 things. The ice machine was getting louder with every step, and my family had no idea whose house they were standing in. Room 112 took 2 swipes to open because the lock battery was on the replacement list for July. I stepped in, let the door click shut behind me, and stood in the dimness with my bag in my hand. The ice machine on the other side of the wall dropped a fresh load into its bin. It sounded like a verdict. Here's what I knew about room 112 that my sister did not. I knew the bed was a rollaway cot dressed up with a duvet because the original frame had been damaged in the renovation and its replacement was on a truck somewhere between here and the manufacturer. I knew the hum in the wall was the ice machine's compressor and that the sound engineer's report had measured it at a level politely described as noticeable. I knew the carpet had a seam that did not quite match at the door to the bathroom and that housekeeping had a standing note to angle the luggage rack to cover it. I knew all of this because I had read it in a spreadsheet. I owned the spreadsheet. I owned the wall the hum lived in, and the compressor making it, and the corridor outside, and the marble my bag had slid across, and the sconces, and the lemon polish, and the flowers. I owned the Lakemont Hotel, not in a manner of speaking, not, my company has a stake. The deed is held by Birchline Hospitality, and Birchline Hospitality is me, built over 20 years, 2 small properties, and then this one, the big one. The one I had no business buying except that I knew every inch of what it could be. My family did not know. That was not an accident, and it was not modesty. It was a decision I had made 3 weeks earlier, sitting in the general manager's office with the weekly group bookings report in my hand, looking at a name I had not spoken aloud in years. Calloway, Renee, Marlowe family reunion, 9 rooms, 2 nights, banquet room, Saturday evening. Andre Boyd has managed hotels for 30 years. He has put up presidents of companies and at least one actual senator, and I have never once seen him rattled. But when I told him what I wanted, he took off his glasses and cleaned them, which is the closest he comes to shouting. "Let me make sure I understand," he said. "Your family has booked this hotel, by chance." "My sister likes nice things," I said. "The Lakemont is the nicest thing within an hour of my parents' house. There is a kind of math to it." "And you want me to put the owner of this property in general inventory as a stranger and say nothing to anyone?" "Whatever room comes up," I said. "No upgrades, no flags on the reservation, no manager's amenity. If my sister assigns the rooms, let her assign them." "They will treat you like anybody," Andre said. "That's the test, Andre," I said. "Anybody should be enough." He looked at me for a long moment, and then he put his glasses back on and said, "Noted," in the tone of a man recording an objection for the minutes. Andre had met my family for exactly 0 minutes and had already done the math I was still refusing to do. Because here's the truth I can only say now, looking back. I did not set up that weekend as a trap. I set it up as a door. I had been gone from my family in every meaningful way for 20 years, and some stubborn last room in my heart wanted to know whether, if I arrived with nothing in my hands, no titles, no buildings, no proof, they would finally treat me like I belonged to them. People ask the question that way. They hope it that way. And then they get their answer in a lobby, out loud, in front of 40 strangers, with their mother nodding along. That first evening, I walked my own hotel like a ghost. I ate dinner alone at the end of the bar, and the bartender, who had been hired after the reopening and knew my face only from a holiday party, treated me with the standard kindness we train for, which felt cleaner than anything my family had said to me in years. I watched the wedding party laugh by the windows. I watched my cousins order bottles of wine and sign them to rooms I was paying to heat and light and clean. In the corridor, by the service stairs, I passed Rosa Delgado, head of housekeeping, 58 years old, a cart of fresh linens in front of her like a general's staff car. Rosa has known me since I was 18. She read my face in about 1 second, the way she reads a room from a doorway, and I watched her understand the whole arrangement without a word. Her eyes went to the key card in my hand, 112. Her mouth went flat. She did not stop. She did not blow it. She pushed her cart past me, and very quietly, in the voice she once used to teach me hospital corners, she said, "Mija, the ice machine room?" "It's a test, Rosa," I murmured. "For them or for you," she said, and kept walking, because Rosa Delgado has never in her life waited around for an answer she already knew. Back in 112, I unpacked. I hung the dress I had brought for Saturday's banquet on the back of the bathroom door, where the shadow of the cot could not reach it, which is a strange thing to think about a shadow. But at 11 at night, with the compressor cycling, the cot threw the only shadow in the room, and I did not want anything of mine touching it. I lay down. The wall hummed. Sometime after midnight, the machine dropped another load of ice, and I laughed, alone, in the dark, in the worst room of my own hotel. Because what else can you do with a thing like that? You laugh, or you start telling the truth, and I was not ready yet. You should know it did not start in that lobby. Things like that lobby never start in that lobby. I was born in 1988, first child, in a small lake town where my father sold insurance and my mother ran the church rummage sale like a 5-star operation. For 3 years, I was, by all accounts, a delight. Then Renee arrived, and the family found its permanent arrangement, the way furniture finds its place in a room and never moves again. Renee was the sun. I was whatever stands near the sun and catches the heat. A lightning rod, my aunt called me once, and she meant it kindly, which is the worst way to mean a thing like that. If a glass broke, I had put it too close to the edge. If Renee failed a class, I had distracted her all semester. If money went missing from my mother's purse, I was asked first and longest, even the year I was working 2 jobs and Renee was 16 with a closet full of clothes nobody could account for. I want to be fair because fairness is the only thing that separates a story from a grudge. My parents were not monsters. There were Christmases I remember warmly. My father taught me to drive on the lake road with a patience he never showed at the dinner table. But a family can be ordinary and kind in 100 small ways and still have one terrible habit. The way a house can be beautiful and have rot in one wall. Our rot was simple. Renee was never responsible, and so someone else always had to be. And I was the someone. The graduation party was the end of it. June 2005. I was 17. My parents had put down a deposit at a banquet hall for Renee's 8th grade graduation party, because that is a thing my family did for Renee, a banquet hall for the 8th grade. Renee, 14, took the envelope of the remaining balance to deliver it because she wanted to feel grown up, and spent it with her friends over one mall weekend on what I never fully learned: clothes, a bracelet, sushi. The hall canceled the booking, and at our kitchen table, with the canceled contract lying there like a body, my mother looked at the two of us and chose. "Your sister would never," she said to me. "You were responsible for that envelope the moment you knew it existed. You are always responsible." I remember looking at my father. He was doing the bills. He did not look up. I left for good 14 months later, the summer after I turned 18. Before dawn, one duffel bag, a note on the kitchen table that said I had a job and a place to stay and would call when I was settled. I rode a bus 4 towns over to the Pinecrest Motor Lodge, where a woman named Rosa Delgado was short a housekeeper for the summer rush. Nobody from my family called for 9 days. I know it was 9 because for 9 days, every time the motel's office phone rang, I stopped breathing. On the 10th day, my mother called to ask if I was coming to Renee's birthday dinner. The Pinecrest had 22 rooms, a gravel lot, and an ice machine older than I was. Rosa ran housekeeping with 2 carts and a code of conduct stricter than most religions. She taught me to turn a room in 14 minutes. She taught me that you check the corners of a fitted sheet the way you check your own conscience, because both will betray you in front of guests if you let them slide. And one August afternoon, when I had cried in the linen closet over something on the phone from home, she stood me up by the shoulders and said the sentence I have carried for 20 years. "They can take a lot from you, mija. They cannot take how you do a thing." So I did things well. It turns out that is a whole life if you commit to it. Housekeeping to front desk in 4 years. Front desk to night auditor, which is the job where a hotel teaches you its true arithmetic. Every charge and comp and quietly forgiven mistake moving through the ledger at 2 in the morning. Night auditor to assistant manager. In 2015, at 27, I became the youngest general manager in our company's history. Running a highway-side property where I learned that a hotel is a machine for dignity. A guest arrives tired and diminished, and you hand them a clean room and their name said correctly, and something in them is repaired. I believed that. I believe it still. In 2019, I bought a failing 12-room inn an hour from the lake with 11 years of savings and a loan officer who approved me, she said, because my projections were the most conservative she had seen all year, and I had beaten every number I had ever shown her. I stood in that inn alone the night the sale closed, holding the keys, and I understood for the first time what I had actually been working toward all those years. Not money. A thing with my name on it that could not be voted away from me at a kitchen table. The inn worked. A second property followed in 2022, and I formed Birchline Hospitality because banks take you more seriously when you sound like a place instead of a person. And then in 2024, the Lakemont came up for sale. The grand old hotel of my hometown, the one whose parking lot I used to cut through on my way to school, gone shabby under an out-of-state group that had milked it for a decade. Everyone in town had an opinion about what it needed. I had a binder. Birchline bought it that fall, and I spent 14 months and every dollar of margin I had renovating it. And in the autumn of 2025, it reopened, and the local paper ran a photograph of the lobby with the caption, "The Lakemont, restored to herself." They interviewed Andre for that piece. The ownership group declined to comment, the article said. The ownership group had been standing in the back of the photograph in a housekeeping smock that day, checking sightlines, but nobody knew to look. Rosa runs my housekeeping department now. I hired her the week after the sale closed, and the day she walked into the Lakemont's laundry, she put her hand flat on the new folding table like she was taking possession of a battlefield. My family knew none of it. They knew I worked in hotels. The phrase was my mother's, and she deployed it at gatherings the way you mention a cousin's parole, quickly, moving on. Renee, 7 years into a marriage with a husband whose patience I would come to respect, and whose silence I would come to understand, had a big house and a known address. And at the holidays, I got photo cards from them with everyone's name printed in gold script, and my name was not on the envelope half the time. Tessa or a current resident. You can know all of that about your family, know it for decades. And still, when an email arrives saying they have booked your hotel for a reunion, feel a door swing open somewhere in your chest and think, against all the evidence, maybe, that is not stupidity. I refuse to call it stupidity. It is the oldest hope there is. And the people who sell it to you are supposed to be the ones who never would. I could not sleep that first night. And it was not the ice machine. I have slept beside worse machinery than that. It was the nod. My mother's slow, reasonable nod, playing on a loop on the ceiling of room 112. So at 10 minutes to 11, I gave up, put on a sweater, and went out to find a cup of tea, the way any guest might. The corridor was empty. The machine dropped ice as I passed it, a little percussion section seeing me off. The lobby at night is my favorite hour of any hotel. The lights come down, the marble goes soft and gold, and the building exhales. I got my tea from the lobby bar just before it closed and sat in the big wing chair in the dark corner by the stone fireplace, the chair I had bought at an estate sale and argued onto the floor plan over a designer's objection. That is where I was sitting when my sister came to the front desk and went to work on a 19-year-old girl. Kayla Munn had been with us 7 months. She was on the desk alone at 11 because the night manager was at the loading dock signing for the banquet linens. A 4-minute absence, the kind of gap every hotel has and every difficult guest somehow finds. Kayla is from town. She has a name tag with a little gold star on it that the front office gives for perfect guest scores, and she wears it perfectly level, and she had absolutely no chance against what walked up to that desk. "I need to talk to someone about our bill," Renee said, except it was not a request. It was an opening statement. She set her phone on the counter between them like a weapon being tabled. "We are the Marlowe reunion, 9 rooms. We were promised a family rate." Kayla Polite found the booking, explained correctly that the group rate had been applied at booking, that the banquet package was as contracted, that she would be happy to print the folio. "Then unapply it and apply a better one," Renee said. "Comp the rooms, all of them." "Ma'am, I'm not able to comp." "Then find me someone who can. You're a child. Why is a child running this desk?" And then leaning in with the smile I've known since I was 6 years old, the one that arrives just before the world gets worse. "Let me explain how this goes, sweetheart. I have 11,000 followers, and I know how to use a review. I will describe this dump in detail. I will name names. What's your name?" "Kayla? Kayla." She said each letter like she was carving it. "I'll put it in the review. I'll put the star in too." I watched the girl's hands. "That is where it shows first. Always." Her voice held. "I understand your frustration, ma'am. All the phrases we teach." But her hands had gone behind the counter to hold each other still, and her eyes did one quick sweep of the lobby looking for backup that was 4 minutes away. And my sister, smelling it, pressed. The ballroom needed upgrading for tomorrow, and there would be no charge for that either, would there? The flowers her cousin saw in the lobby would look better on her banquet tables. The suite her parents were in was fine, but the late checkout would be free, obviously. Each demand planted like a flag in a country she had decided was undefended. It was 11 at night, and she was negotiating like the building owed her rent. And under every sentence, the same threat, turning. "Shut this dump down." Sweetheart, I didn't move. I want to tell you, I rose out of that chair like justice itself. But I sat in the dark with my tea going cold, and I learned something about myself, which is that 30 years of training does not leave the body in one night. My room was a joke between sisters, ugly but survivable. I had absorbed it the way I had absorbed 100 things, and I had been prepared, I think, to absorb the whole weekend. But this was not a joke, and it was not mine to absorb. She was doing this to a teenager wearing a name tag I paid for, in a building where the whole point, the entire point, the thing I had built 20 years and 3 properties on, was that nobody who walks in tired and unimportant gets treated like they are nothing. My family had finally committed the one crime I had never learned to forgive, because it was the crime I had organized my whole life against. Renee collected her phone, said, "Glad we understand each other," to a girl who had agreed to nothing and walked to the elevators with her sandals slapping the marble, and the sound was the same sound as a bag sliding across a floor. I let the elevator close, then I crossed the lobby. Kayla saw me coming and assembled her face back into service. "Good evening, ma'am. How can I help you?" With the wreckage still visible behind it, and that nearly undid me worse than anything my sister had said. "You did nothing wrong," I said. She blinked. "Ma'am." "Just now. You did nothing wrong, and nothing she said will happen to you. Do one thing for me." I took a notepad from the desk, the good ones with the pencil, and set it in front of her. "Write down every word while it's fresh. Times, demands, the threat, the spelling of your name. All of it. Give it to Mr. Boyd in the morning and tell him Tessa asked you to." Her eyes went down to the notepad and back up to me, and I watched her try to place me, a guest in a sweater at 11 at night who talked like a deposition. "Tessa," she repeated. "He'll know," I said. "You're doing a good job, Kayla. The star is level." I took the service elevator back down to 1. Guests are not supposed to use it, but I needed 1 minute. inside the one place in the hotel where nobody performs anything, where the walls are scuffed by cart bumpers and the inspection certificate hangs crooked, and a person who owns the building can stand with her back against the steel and let her face do whatever it has been refusing to do all day. The doors opened on one. I walked past the ice machine and it made its sound, and I stood in my terrible room and understood that the weekend had changed shape while I was holding a cup of tea, and that what happened next was going to be up to me, which is the loneliest sentence in the language. Saturday arrived wearing its best manners, sun on the lake, kayaks out, the smell of the breakfast service drifting up the terrace, my hotel doing the thing I built it to do, which is to make a summer morning feel like a promise somebody intends to keep. My mother knocked on the door of room 112 at 9. I knew it was her before I opened it. There is a knock my mother does, 3 taps, wait on the second one that I could pick out of a police lineup of knocks. She came in 2 steps, took in the room in one practice sweep, the cot, the hum, the seam in the carpet, and I watched her file it all under acceptable. "This is fine," she said, to herself more than me. Then to me, "I want to talk to you about last night." For one fraction of a second, I thought she meant the front desk, that she had seen it somehow, or heard, and had come to be ashamed with me. The hope does not die. I am telling you, it does not die. It just learns to live on less and less. "The lobby," she said. "The scene." "The scene," I repeated, standing there like a martyr in front of all those people while your sister handed out keys, making everyone uncomfortable. You've been back in this family's life for 5 minutes, Tessa. And whatever you think you saw last night, whatever look you've got on your face right now, this weekend is about family. Your father is 67. Renee worked very hard to organize this. Don't make a scene. You always make it about you. I have spent a long time since with that speech. I have taken it apart like a folio with a billing error, looking for the moment where it could have gone differently. And here is what I have concluded. There is no such moment. By 9 that morning, the story had already been written the way our family always wrote it. Renee had spent the night spinning the lobby into my fault, the way the envelope had been my fault in 2005, and my mother had arrived not to discover the truth, but to deliver the settlement terms. I was to be quiet, and in exchange, I would be allowed to stay. She said her piece standing directly in front of the cot. The whole time she talked, it was right there behind her, the dressed-up rollaway her older daughter was sleeping on, 8 feet from an industrial compressor, and she never saw it. That is the detail I keep. Not cruelty, blindness, the particular blindness you have to practice for decades until it becomes effortless. "I won't make a scene, Mom," I said, and I meant it, although not the way she heard it. Breakfast on the terrace then, where Renee was holding court at the long table in white linen, sunglasses up in her hair, telling a story about the caterer for tonight that had half the cousins laughing. The performance of a woman for whom everything is going wonderfully. When she saw me, she did not miss a beat. She just folded me into the show. "There she is. We were starting to think you'd melted." Laughter. "Listen, since you're here, everyone's contributing to tonight. The banquet, the wine, the band, it adds up. We're asking $800 a household." She smiled at me over her orange juice. "Even you." "Even me," I said. "Well, you're a household," Renee said. And there was a small wave of laughter again. Not vicious, just easy, the laughter of people agreeing to the temperature of the water. My cousin Brent, to his credit, did not laugh. He looked at his plate. I have thought about that too since. There is always someone at the table who knows better and is doing the math on what it would cost to say so. I told her I would take care of my share, which was true in a way that had not yet been disclosed, and ate my eggs, and watched my father at the far end of the table reading his phone, and watched the lake glitter past his shoulder, and inside me, very quietly, a meeting was being held. Andre found me at 11 by the staff entrance to the banquet room where I had gone, out of habit I could not suppress, to check the table spacing through the window. He stood beside me, both of us looking through the glass like 2 people at an aquarium, and he said, "Kayla's statement is on my desk, time-stamped. She write it like a court reporter. The threat to name her in a review is in there, word for word." "Good," I said. "The group contract your sister signed has a conduct clause," he said. "Section 9, abusive treatment of staff. It is the standard language. I wrote the standard language, so I can tell you it has teeth." A pause. "Say the word." "The kindness of Andre Boyd is that he will hand you the sword and never once push it toward your hand." "Not for my room," I said. "Not for my pride, Andre. If I do this, it will be for the right reason, and I will sign it myself. Let me get through tonight." "And if tonight gets worse?" Then it gets worse with witnesses, I said, which I thought at the time was wisdom, and understand now was simply the last of the hope, spending itself. The banquet that evening was beautiful, and I can say that with authority, because my team built it. The room glowed. The lake went violet through the tall windows. The Marlowe family reunion dinner, 11 tables, a rented band, a toast from my father that he read off his phone, in which he thanked Renee by name twice for putting family first, and did not say my name at all. I was seated by the kitchen door. I know what seat that is. I have drawn 500 seating charts in my life, and there is always a seat by the kitchen door, and someone has to sit in it, and the chart tells you exactly what the host believes that someone is worth. Servers came through the door beside me all night, and several of them knew me, and not one of them so much as flickered an eyelid, and I have never been prouder of a staff in my life. Near the end, during the band's second set, Renee stood up with her wine and worked the room, table to table, and when she reached mine, she put her hand on my shoulder for the benefit of the cousins and said, lightly, the way you would say it about weather. See? Everyone gets a seat. That's what family means. After it ended, I did not go back to 112. I walked out onto the dock instead, alone, and stood at the end of it in the dark with the boards still warm through my shoes. Behind me, the Lakemont was lit up gold, every window I owned laid out on the black water like a hand of cards. I had built or saved every light in that reflection. There were 140 rooms behind me, and a girl at the desk with a level gold star, and a woman in the laundry who had taught me everything that mattered, and not 1 square foot of any of it had been able to buy me a different seat at my family's table. Money cannot do it. Competence cannot do it. I knew that already. I had known it for years, the way you know a fact in a book. That night I knew it the way you know weather, on your skin. The ice machine greeted me when I came in. By then it was almost funny again. I did not rage that night. I want that on the record, not because anyone would blame me for raging, but because it matters to me that you see what it actually looked like. The thing that happened in room 112 at 11:40 on a Saturday night, it looked like paperwork. I sat on the cot with my back against the headboard that was not really a headboard, and I spread the weekend out in front of me the way a night auditor spreads the day's ledger. Kayla's statement, photographed and sent to me by Andre, her handwriting round and steady, the threat spelled out twice, the group contract with Renee's signature, all 4 initial lines, including Section 9, the folio for 9 rooms, the banquet invoice my parents had personally guaranteed, separate from the room block, because Renee organizes things in a way that keeps her name off the money. And I did what I have done at 2 a.m. for 20 years. I separated what was owed from what was felt. What was felt was 30 years of being the lightning rod, the envelope, the seat by the kitchen door, the nod. None of that was billable. I will tell you something true about people like me, the careful ones, the ones who build. The fantasy of revenge does not actually fit us. I tried it on that night, briefly. I imagined bankrupting the weekend, freezing every card, humiliations choreographed down the corridor, and it hung on me like someone else's coat. What was owed was narrower and harder. A 19-year-old employee of mine had been threatened by name, on my floor, under my roof, by a guest who had signed a contract promising not to do exactly that. If Renee Calloway had been any other guest in the building, any stranger, the conduct clause would already have been invoked. I knew it. Andre knew it. The only thing protecting my sister was that she was my sister. She was being protected by the one relationship she had spent the entire weekend defiling. I sat with that sentence for a while, listening to the wall, and then I worked it like a problem, because that is what I am. The terminations would be under Section 9, documented, by the book, the same as for any guest. My parents' personal payments, the banquet guarantee, their incidentals, would be refunded in full to their cards, because my quarrel had numbers attached, and none of the numbers were theirs. Renee's comps, the ones she had extorted from a teenager, were void, never honored, never logged. No charge would fall on any staff member's scores or any department's ledger. The block would be terminated at 6 a.m, effective at 7, which is harsh and early and precisely what the clause allows. And the reason for the hour was not cruelty. Checkout lines form at 8. I wanted the lobby quiet for what was going to happen in it. I called Andre at 11 minutes before midnight. He answered like he had been sitting by the phone since 11, which, knowing Andre, he had. Terminate the family block at 6, effective 7, I said. Section 9, Kayla's statement attached, my signature on the order, refund my parents' personal cards in full, the banquet guarantee too. Renee's comps are void. Nothing touches the staff. Understood, Andre said. There was a pause. and I could hear him write the next line before he said it. When they demand to see the owner, and they will. Don't dodge, I said. Point. A longer pause, and then Andre Boyd said the only editorial thing he allowed himself in the entire affair. It has been a privilege watching you be patient, Tessa. It will be a privilege watching you stop. I put the phone face down on the nightstand. I slept 7 hours on the worst bed in my own hotel, deep and dreamless, while the ice machine rattled away on the other side of the wall, like an old dog talking in its sleep. People think peace comes after the storm. Sometimes it comes the moment you stop pretending the storm is not yours to command. At 6 o'clock on Sunday morning, every phone in the Marlowe block rang at the same time. I was not in the rooms, obviously, but I've heard the recordings of the desk line that followed, and I have collected the accounts the way you collect accounts of any historic event, from witnesses, and I can reconstruct it for you almost to the minute. The script was 19 words. I wrote it myself, on hotel notepaper, at midnight. Good morning. Checkout is at 7. Your reservations have been terminated by ownership. The front desk can assist. 9 rooms, 9 phones. My cousin Brent thought it was a prank. Aunt Carol's husband demanded the call be traced. My father, by his own account months later, sat up in the dark of the suite and said to my mother, "Something's wrong with the hotel," which, of all the first reactions, was the closest to correct. Something had been wrong with the hotel all weekend. It was being fixed. Renee called the desk back 4 times in 11 minutes. The first call, she laughed. The second call, she threatened a lawsuit. The third call, she demanded the manager, the regional manager, the corporate office, the chain. There is no chain. There is a woman. The fourth call she did not get through because by then the lobby had begun to fill and the desk had other guests. They came down in pajamas. That detail was reported to me by 4 separate people with 4 separate kinds of glee. And I record it here without glee, as fact. The Marlowe family flooded my lobby at 12 minutes past 6 in sleep shirts and 1 bathrobe with a resort logo from a different hotel, and they clustered in the middle of the marble where the key cards had been dealt on Friday. And Renee strode to the front desk in full voice. The morning shift is Andre's shift. He was behind the desk in a pressed suit at 6 in the morning, which guests assumed was coincidence. It was not. He had the file squared in front of him at a right angle to the counter's edge. "Get me the owner," Renee said. "Now!" "Of course, ma'am," said Andre Boyd. And he turned, and he pointed. I was standing by the stone fireplace beside the wing chair from the estate sale. I had been up since 5. I was dressed in the gray suit I wear for bank meetings, the suit a person wears when she intends to be exactly who she is. I was holding a cup of coffee on a saucer, and the saucer did not so much as click, and I watched 40 strangers, 2 bellmen, a wedding party, and early for breakfast, and every member of my family follow the line of Andre's arm across the lobby to me. There is a sound a room makes when its story changes. It is not a gasp. It is a pressure shift, like a door opening somewhere far down a corridor. The lobby of the Lakemont made that sound. My mother's hand went to the neck of her robe. My father took 1 step forward and stopped. My cousin Brent said, audibly into the silence, "Oh my God," in the voice of a man watching 20 years of family dinners re-edit themselves at speed. And Renee laughed, 1 short burst, reflexive, the laugh of a person whose world has never once failed to arrange itself in her favor. "Her?" she said, to Andre, to the lobby, to the universe. "That's the owner? She slept by the ice machine." "Yes, ma'am," Andre said. "We are aware." You could watch the sentence go through her. You could watch her run the weekend back at high speed, the key cards, the kicked bag, the announcement to 40 strangers, the front desk at 11 at night, sweetheart, Kayla, and you could watch her arrive at the only conclusion available, which is that there had never been 1 minute of the weekend in which she had not been performing, in detail, for the one audience with the power to grade it. She crossed the marble to me. I will give her this. She crossed it fast. And the voice that arrived was the other voice, the honey one, the birthday money voice. Tessie, you should have said something. Why didn't you say something? This is crazy. Look, the room's fine, whatever. But the ballroom deposit, the anniversary party in August, the vendors are booked. Tessie, you wouldn't. We're family. The lobby was so quiet I could hear the espresso machine being wiped down behind the bar. You taught me the rate for family this weekend, I said. I'm just honoring your price. She went to her knees. I want to be careful here, because the moment has been retold in my family ever since, and every version flattens it into either tragedy or comedy. And it was neither. My sister, in silk pajamas, lowered herself onto the marble floor of my lobby in front of 40 strangers and begged, and what she begged for was not forgiveness. I listened. I listened with 20 years of training in listening to exactly what a guest is actually asking for. She begged for the deposit, for the ballroom, for the August party, for the version of events in which this was all a misunderstanding between sisters. Not once, not in one clause, did she beg pardon for the girl at the desk. I do not think the girl at the desk existed for her, even then. "Andre," I said, "would you read Section 9, please?" He read it. The standard language. Abusive or threatening conduct toward any member of staff constitutes a material breach and grounds for immediate termination of the agreement without refund of group deposits. He read Kayla's name and her statement's timestamp, 6 minutes past 11 on Friday night. He read the sentence with the review threat in it, word for word, with the spelling. My mother turned and looked at Renee then. I want to mark that because it took 38 years and it lasted perhaps 2 seconds, but I saw it. The look. And my father. My father had not taken out his phone once. He stood near the back in his pajama pants with his arms hanging, and he was looking at me, only at me, and his face was doing something I had not seen it do in my direction since the Lake Road when I was 16 and finally got the parallel park right. It looked like recognition. It looked like a man reading a ledger he had refused to open for 20 years and finding, on every page, the same name in the credit column. "Checkout is at 7, I said to the lobby, gently in my trained voice, the one that makes a sentence sound like the weather. "The desk will assist with luggage. My parents' charges have been refunded in full." And then to the bellman who was already moving. "Miguel, please help my mother and father with their bags. They're on 3. Renee was still on the floor. Scott helped her up. It was the first thing I had seen him do all weekend. And the way he did it, with his jaw set sideways and his eyes anywhere but at her, told me a second story was beginning somewhere inside that marriage, one that was none of my business and would be along in its own time. They were gone by 5 past 7. The lobby refilled with strangers. The wedding party's mimosas arrived. At 7:30, Kayla Munn came on shift, found out from the night desk what had happened, walked the long way around the counter, and stood in front of me with her level gold star, trying to assemble a sentence. "You said your name was Tessa," she managed. "It is," I said. "Tessa Marlowe. The reunion was mine. The hotel is also mine. You're going to find that the second thing fixed the first thing, eventually." She did not fully understand it then. That was fine. I am still working on it myself. The story of what happened in my lobby took roughly 6 hours to escape it, which by small-town standards is restraint. It moved the way these things move now. A wedding party guest had filmed 30 seconds of a woman in silk pajamas kneeling on marble, and that clip went around 2 county group chats by lunch. But the clip that mattered came from inside the family. My cousin Brent, it turned out, had filmed the key ceremony on Friday for the reunion's photo album, of all things, and his footage had the whole verse. "She can sleep by the ice machine," the kicked bag sliding, my mother's nod, slow and clear in the background, like a referee confirming a goal. Renee spent that Sunday building her version, and by Monday it was deployed. They had been ambushed. I had lured the family there, seated myself by the ice machine as theater, and humiliated decent people in a premeditated trap. It was, I will admit, a workable story. It had a villain with resources and a victim with tears, and it ran well for about a day and a half. It died in 11 seconds. That is the length of the clip Brent finally posted into the family group chat with no caption after Aunt Carol repeated the ambush version one too many times. 11 seconds of Friday afternoon. You cannot ambush a person into kicking your bag. The chat, which had produced perhaps 400 messages in 36 hours, produced nothing for the rest of the day. There is no rebuttal to footage of yourself. I stayed out of all of it. I posted nothing, corrected no one, gave no interviews to the cousins who suddenly wanted long phone calls. I ran my hotel. Tuesday I drove to the inn, my first one, and spent a day re-grouting a shower with the maintenance lead, because some weeks the only honest therapy is a thing you can finish. The consequences arrived on their own schedule, without my supervision, the way consequences do once you stop interrupting them. The August anniversary party, the one Renee had begged for on her knees, moved to a banquet hall by the highway, the kind with a dropped ceiling and a parking lot view, the kind, I am saying, that my sister had spent her whole adult life making faces about. Half the invitations declined, not because of me, I never said a word about attendance, but because people had seen the footage, and it turns out a performance only works until the audience has seen the dressing room. Scott came to the Lakemont in July, alone on a Thursday in work clothes. He asked the desk for me by name, waited 40 minutes in the lobby without complaint, and when I came out, he stood up and handed me an envelope. Inside was a personal check for the full amount of every comp Renee had extorted at the front desk, calculated correctly to the dollar, which meant he had gone through the folio line by line. "This isn't her apologizing," he said. "She doesn't know I'm here. I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm asking you to believe I didn't know what I married until Sunday." He stopped and then gave me the rest of it, because the man had clearly rehearsed in the truck. 11 years I watched her do versions of that. I told myself it was confidence. You watched it for 30. I don't know how you're standing. "Repetition," I said, and he laughed once, the way you laugh at a thing that is not funny, but is at least finally said out loud. I cashed the check and put the entire amount into the staff education fund, with Kayla Munn's name first on the list. It seemed like the only place that particular money could be turned back into something clean. My mother went silent. Not cold, silent. The distinction matters in my family, where cold is an instrument and silence is a malfunction. She did not call to apologize, and she did not call to fight. I learned from Aunt Carol, months later, that at her own kitchen table, when Carol attempted one more retelling of the ambush version, my mother set down her cup and said, "Stop it, Carol," and left the room, and that this was, in the local jurisprudence of sisters, an unprecedented verdict, the nod, unhappening itself, 1 inch a year. It is not nothing. I have decided it is not nothing. And my father wrote me a letter. It came to Birchline's office in September, addressed in the careful, uphill handwriting of a man who composed at a desk with a calculator. 3 pages, no preamble, no flowers. He had gone back through 20 years, he wrote, the way he would audit a client's claims, and he listed them. The envelope in 2005, where he had found, in his own old files, the receipt that proved I had been at work that mall weekend, a receipt he had seen at the time and filed and chosen not to mention at the kitchen table. The Christmas in 2011 I was blamed for ruining, and what had actually ruined it. Item after item, dated, each with the same finding. He had run the numbers on his own family, and the numbers had come back wrong, and he was a man who could not live with a wrong number once he had seen it, which I suppose is the one trait of his I inherited entire. The last line of the letter was the only sentence in it about himself. I was looking at my phone for 20 years, and I am ashamed of every minute. I did not answer it for 11 days. I kept it in my desk drawer, flat under the Lakemont steed, which is not symbolism. It is just where the flat things go, although I noticed the arrangement every time I opened the drawer. People assume the hard part ended in the lobby. The lobby was the easy part. The lobby took one phone call and a pressed suit. The hard part was the Monday after, and the Monday after that. Being right, it turns out, is a transaction. It clears. Being whole is a construction project, and nobody hands you a binder for it. I worked. That is my answer to most weather. I worked a flawless July, the hotel ran full, the wedding parties turned over like clean linen, and several evenings I finished the day, walked to my car in the staff lot, sat behind the wheel, and did not start the engine for 40 minutes. Not crying. Just sitting with my hands in my lap, like a guest in my own life, feeling the place where something had been removed. Because here is what nobody tells you about finally getting the proof. I had spent 30 years suspecting my family saw me as nothing and surviving on the sliver of doubt. Maybe I was too sensitive. Maybe the next visit would be different. The weekend had taken my sliver. They had been shown an ordinary Tessa, a Tessa with nothing in her hands, and they had priced her in front of strangers, and the price was a cot by the ice machine and a seat by the kitchen door. The grief I was sitting with in that parking lot was not for my family. It was for the version of them I had been inventing since I was 6, the one I kept renovating in my head, the one that was never load-bearing. Rosa found me in the empty banquet room one evening in August, sitting at a stripped table in the dark with the chairs up. She did not ask what I was doing. She took down a second chair, sat, and let the lake go pink out the windows for a while. "You wanted them to pick the version of you with nothing in her hands," she said finally. "Anybody should have been enough, Rosa," I said. "That was the whole test. Anybody should have been enough." "For us, Mia," she said, "anybody was, from the first day. A girl off the bus with one bag could not fold a corner to save her life. We picked her with nothing in her hands." She stood, pushed the chair back up onto the table, squared it. "You did not lose a family this summer. You lost a costume they made you sew for them. Go home." I sat alone a while longer, and then I did something I had not done in 20 years of closing rooms. I cried in one, once, briefly, with the door locked. For the 6-year-old at the kitchen table, and the 18-year-old on the bus, and the 38-year-old by the ice machine, all 3 of whom had done nothing wrong. And then I washed my face in the banquet room service sink, and I turned off the lights myself, the way Rosa taught me, checking the corners. The dark, for the first time in a long time, felt earned instead of empty. I answered my father's letter in September, 1 page. I told him the receipt from 2005 had cost me more than the envelope ever did, and that I was willing to have coffee with the man who wrote the letter, and that the condition was simple. Truth without an audience. No restaurant where we might be seen and reported on. No family briefing afterward. No performance of reconciliation for the holiday record. A diner, halfway between his town and mine, on a Tuesday. He wrote back 4 days later with the name of a diner. We met in the last week of September. He was there before me, in a booth by the window with a manila folder squared in front of him, and when I sat down, he pushed it across the table without a word, like a man surrendering his weapon at the door. It was the audit. The real one, the original worksheets, 20 years of family verdicts rerun in pencil, with my name moved out of the debit column line by line. He had even calculated, at the bottom of 1 page, with his calculator's precision, and a notation in the margin, the total of the money I had been blamed for across 2 decades. It came to less than 1 weekend's banquet at my hotel. Underneath it, he had written, "All that for this." We did not hug. We are not those people, and 1 diner does not renovate a man. But we talked for 2 hours, the longest conversation of our lives, and at the end of it he asked quietly what the Lakemont was like to run. And I told him about the night audit, the 2 a.m. arithmetic, the way a hotel's whole day has to balance before the sun comes up, and he listened with his coffee going cold, leaning forward, and I realized I was watching a 67-year-old insurance man discover that his daughter had been speaking his native language all along. We have coffee about once a month now. He has never once been late. He still does not say very much, but he reads our local business pages, and twice he has mailed me clippings about the hotel with no note, just a line under my company's name in pen, which in the dialect of my father is practically a poem. My mother sent back, by way of him, a casserole dish I had left at their house in some other decade. Clean, with a square of paper taped to the lid that said, "This is yours." I stood at my kitchen counter and laughed, and then did not laugh. It is not an apology. I know better than to file it as one. But I know my mother's grammar, and in it, returning a thing that is yours, intact, is as close as she has ever come to acknowledging a debt. The door between us stays ajar exactly 1 inch. I no longer stand in the draft waiting. I just have not nailed it shut. And some days that feels like weakness, and most days it feels like the only kind of strength I have left to practice. Renee, I have not spoken to. The severance held through the August party, through the holidays, through a long February silence. And then in March, a text arrived, a paragraph, the architecture of which I recognized before I finished the first sentence. It opened with how hard the year had been for her. I read it twice, noted that the girl at the desk had still, 9 months later, never made an appearance in any communication, and archived it without reply. Some doors are not ajar. Some doors are walls now, and the discovery of my 40s is that you are allowed to let a wall be a wall without standing guard at it. It does not need you. That is the whole point of a wall. The hotel had its best year since the reopening. Kayla Munn moved up to front desk supervisor in the spring, the youngest we have. Her gold star retired to a frame on her parents' hallway wall, a detail I know because her mother wrote me a card. The education fund paid her first tuition installment in January. Rose's pension vested in full, and when the paperwork went through, she examined it at the laundry's folding table for a long minute and then said, "Good, now I will work another 10 years anyway," and went back to the linens, and I went to my office and was unfit for meetings for a quarter of an hour, and room 112. The frame finally arrived, and we fixed the wall that winter, proper insulation, the compressor remounted, the hum gone. Andre walked the finished room with me, clipboard against his chest, and offered the obvious. New number. Folded into the renovation, retire 112. No guest need ever know its history. "Fix the wall," I said. "Keep the number." He looked at me over the glasses. "Some things should stay on the map," I said. "Not humming, just there. So you remember where you slept the night before you stopped asking permission to exist?" He wrote "keep number" on the clipboard in the steady hand he uses for everything, as if I had said something about carpet. These nights, sometimes, when a desk shift runs short, I cover the break myself. It scandalizes the staff, and I do it anyway. Last month, a woman came in off the late bus, one duffel bag, tired in the specific way I have spent my whole life learning to see, the tiredness of someone who has been made small all the way to your doorstep. I gave her a quiet room on 3, away from the elevators. I said her name correctly. I watched some piece of her come back to the surface, the piece a clean room, and a correct name can repair. And I thought about Rosa, 20 years ago, standing a crying girl, up by the shoulders in a linen closet. The building is just the costume. That is the thing I finally understand. The hotel was never the answer to my family. The hotel is just the place where I practice, every day, at scale. The one belief they could not knock out of me, that nobody is the room they were assigned. I want to leave the story there, with the lights on the lake, but before I go, let me speak directly to you for a minute. Not as the owner of anything, just as a woman who once carried her own kicked bag down a long corridor with her face perfectly calm. If you have a family like mine, you already know the cruelest trick of it. It is not the insults. The insults are weather. The trick is the hope. The way they hand you, every few years, just enough warmth to keep you auditioning. The way you can build a whole life, a whole self, a whole company, and still walk into a lobby at 38 years old thinking, maybe this time, if I come with nothing in my hands, they will finally pick me. So here is the one truth that Weekend left me with, and I will hand it to you the way Rosa handed me mine, plainly, by the shoulders. Watch how people treat you when they think you have nothing. That is the only honest receipt they will ever hand you. Not how they treat your success, your money, your usefulness, how they treat your nothing. Believe that receipt the first time you read it. You are allowed to believe it. Believing it is not bitterness, and it is not giving up on love. It is just accurate bookkeeping, and you are allowed to keep accurate books on the people who taught you not to. And if it turns out the people who should have saved you the best room gave you the one by the ice machine, listen to me. That room is not your worth. That room is their confession. Take it from a woman who slept in the confession all night and woke up at 5 and put on her good gray suit. Wherever you're listening from, I hope somebody saves you the good room. And if they don't, build the hotel. Good night.